All
Ooh.
right. Good morning, all iLive listeners. You're here with Coach Mike, and we have a special guest today. Her name is Eman Hillawi, and she has a Dancing in Circles website. You can check it out. She's an aerial hoop and pole dancer professional. She teaches, performs at many events. We'll go through all that. We'll also learn about her journey and her craft and how it's all beneficial for fitness and health. So, Eman, how you doing today?
Good, how are
I'm great.
you?
I'm great. Just let's start. How did it all start off for you? Like, how did you get into fitness activities, and how did it all start?
I was always kind of a little bit of a gym rat, but when I moved to Toronto, I was kind of looking for something that wasn't the gym, something new. I actually tried pole dancing on a Groupon many years before. I took my first class, and they make you do a little pole hold, which is like a tiny little pull up, and you try to hold yourself, squeezing the knees on the pole. And I left that class with my triceps bruised. I didn't go back for years. The studio I went to sent me an email. They gave me a little intro offer. I walked into my first class and I never left. So I
Jeez.
never went back to the gym, and I never
But you
left.
started, but you
Yeah.
started off at the gym, right?
Um,
What were you
Sorry.
interested? What was your interest like? Why did you get started in the gym first?
I was like always pretty self-conscious about my weight and my body image. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was a fine artist
Mm-hmm.
before I did this. I was a graphic designer. I spent a lot of time sitting, drawing at a desk, and I was always like pretty concerned about what my body looked like. I was
Yeah.
always on the scale. Sorry about that. I'm just gonna turn this off. I was always checking the scale, checking the numbers, and I was like pretty concerned, but I never really saw any like definition or any change in my body by like going to the gym. I was a little bit of a cardio bunny. I'd like go run on the machines, and sometimes I would go 2 times a day, 3 times a day. If I felt like I ate too much, I would go back to the
What
gym.
kinds of
You know what
workouts? What
I
kind of
mean?
workouts were you doing in the gym at that time?
I was doing cardio. I was doing weights, like the weight machines. I had a
Mhm.
personal trainer at one point.
Okay.
Take the classes.
What
I
did
would
the
do
what did the trainer? What was the trainer focusing on you for your strength and everything?
Yeah, we were focusing on like some strength exercises. Mostly she was showing me how to use the weight machines, which I think is a thing that Good Life kind of presses on you.
Okay,
So
so okay, good, yeah.
yeah. So they teach you how to use the weight machines correctly, things like that. But again, I never really saw any like significant changes in my body that I was like super happy with. I was always on a diet. I was always on the next fad thing. I remember there was that girl. She's still pretty famous on Instagram. I think her name is Kayla Itzinas, and
Mhm.
she had a really intense like hit workout program. And I think the diet that she had was like on a calorie deficit of like 1,200 calories a day or something.
Were you
So
measuring your food? Were you measuring your food and everything?
I was measuring my food. I was doing all of that. Don't do it
Mhm.
anymore, but
And how did that didn't work out, or you didn't see the results you
it
wanted with
didn't
the
really work
measuring?
out. I was hungry all of the time, so I would fall off my diets all the time. I was constantly at the gym. I didn't really feel like I was seeing any results. And as soon as I walked into my first pole class, I just fell in love. I was like super in love with what I was doing, and I was more focused on what my body could do than what it looked like. So I was super happy. I never went back to the
So,
gym.
so walk us through how did you get even interested in pole dancing?
Yeah, so I can tell you the first pole dancer that I ever saw on Ellen many years ago when pole dancing first became a thing. I believe her name is Janine Butterfly. She went on to
Mhm.
go and do Cirque du Soleil and many other things. So I saw her on Ellen many years ago. I was still quite young, and there weren't a lot of pole studios at the time, but I always admired it. And there was another girl that I saw on YouTube when YouTube first kind of became a thing. Her handle is Dirty Birdie, and she had this beautiful spin pole routine, and she looked so just like fluid. She didn't really do anything super crazy, but everything was just so fluid and feminine and beautiful, and I was always really drawn to it. I did a little bit
Wow.
of gymnastics and ballet and tap when I was really young, but I was never interested, and I never stuck to it. And I
How
always
long did you do the gymnastics for?
Oh, a year. I learned nothing. I was
Okay.
5. I went for a year. I didn't learn how to do the splits. I maybe kind of learned how to do a cartwheel, not very well.
Would you say you were naturally athletic?
Not at all.
No? Like
Not at all. I
you
was one
felt
of
you had to work at things?
I was one of those kids who couldn't use the monkey bars. I was always afraid of everything. I wasn't particularly interested in sports. When we would play soccer in school, I would like be off in the corner picking grass and daydreaming, you know? So
What was your body image like as you were younger coming up? Like,
I wasn't super interested in what my body looked like. Actually, when I was growing up, all of my friends were boys. I was a huge tomboy, and I wasn't really like concerned about what I looked like or what people thought of me or anything like that. And it wasn't really until I hit puberty, until I hit my preteen years, that I became really concerned with what my body looked like, and then I started developing a bunch of eating disorders. So,
wow. What disorders did you have?
I was like really restricting my eating. I was eating like one meal a day. I never really made myself throw up, but I guess working out to that extent of like
Wow.
eating a lot and then feeling guilty and like purging by like going to the gym and spending a bunch of hours in the gym, just like burn it off, is kind of the equivalent, if that makes sense. So that was kind of where my head was always at. And then like until really I like had moved out of my family home and I could kind of like get my brain into doing what I really wanted to do. And then I found circus and I found like kind of a purpose, something that gave me an outlet to be creative. It gave me an outlet to move and gave me a way to make money. So it
Yeah.
actually
Tell me,
so
how did you
healthy.
start the circus? Tell us that.
So the studio that I went to offered pole and aerial hoop. I had gone to Burning Man just before I started. So the first time I went to Burning Man, I saw a little bit of circus. There's a ton of Cirque du Soleil artists who go and who perform. So I had seen a little bit of it. I came back. I was really excited to try pole, but also excited to try a little bit of aerial hoop. So I actually kind of gravitated a little bit more towards the aerial hoop than I did the pole in the beginning. And I flip flop back and forth. I still do that. I have like, sometimes I'll focus really hard for a couple of months on aerial hoop and then I'll take a break and I'll be like, I really miss the pole. And then I'll go back to pole. So I did a little bit of that when I first started, and and that's kind of how I got into aerial circus as well. And then when I decided I wanted to pursue it a little bit more seriously, I took it outside of the pole dance studio environment and I went into a bigger circus school called Circability. They moved, I'm not sure where they moved
Now,
to.
when you start with the circus, right? What kind of like, because you're in unbelievable shape, and I hope people visit Dancing in Circles. Is it dancingincircles.com?
.ca.
.ca. You
Yeah.
will see Eman in action. I mean, I'm telling you right now, she can go. Like, I mean, it's graceful. And I want to talk about the art side, because you started off deep in art, right?
Yes, yeah.
Do you think that played into the graceful movements that you do on the pole and in the ring?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I had a very high attention to detail and I had a really good understanding of the 10,000 hour rule and how much time it takes to like really perfect and master a craft.
Yeah.
And that was all I really knew. You know, I spent my entire life up until I hit my college years drawing and painting, you know? So I understood how much work and effort that took and dedication it takes to perfect those details. And I was always really focused on the details, even coming into the sport. One thing that people don't really realize, and I mean, like, because I don't come from a dance background, so having that realization that like you're creating these shapes and these lines, and that is the thing that people are looking at. Like when you're looking at it as an outsider, you're looking at that like quite subconsciously. So you're not really realizing exactly what you're looking at. You're like, wow, these are like crazy cool tricks or whatever, you know what I mean? But really it's about creating shapes and creating lines and extensions and creating those shapes with your body as opposed to with a paintbrush, you know? So the attention to the knees and the micro bends and the toes and your hands. I took a bunch of ballet classes in my
Right.
adult years to perfect the hands, you know, the chin, not doing this.
I know earlier we were talking about, using body weight, right? To build all the strength that you have. What kinds of exercises and things were they putting you through when you started out with the circus and through the training as you were coming up?
When you first learn pole, so there's like two kind of different methods. I think when you first learn pole, a lot of the things that you will learn is like poise and how to maneuver yourself around it. And so sometimes the learning process when you first learn pole is quite simple because you can keep yourself on the ground. You don't have to necessarily like get up in the air right off the bat. When it comes to hoop stuff, once you get in, you're sitting and you're pretty and, you can hang out, but you have to get in. So you have to learn how to get upside down right away. You know what I mean? So there are a ton of exercises that we do, a lot of things when it comes to like going upside down and inverting. We were talking about this earlier. A lot of people think it comes from the core and the lower body, but it actually comes from your shoulders and your lats being able to squeeze, open up the shoulders, and
Now, the reason why,
able to control this.
yeah,
Yeah, as women coming into a sport like that is quite like female dominated, we don't necessarily naturally have a pull up, but that's like so important for all
this is what I want to know, because there's listeners right now, right?
Yeah.
And they're wondering, they've been out of shape, haven't done things, but they're interested in joining up or getting started with pole dancing. Like, how would you work them through, deficiencies in muscle strength in certain areas of their bodies and things like that to really make sure they can be successful at pole dancing and aerial hoop training as well?
Yeah. So there's a ton of conditioning that we do. And some of it you might recognize if you do like a little bit of calisthenic stuff, even just getting upside down, like calisthenics, yoga, like there's a lot of things that like translate. I think it's super important. I get my students to all like work on their headstands and just get into
So you get them in headstances right away?
Yeah, totally. With a wall or with a pole, you've got a little bit of support behind your back, so you're not like freestanding or anything like that. You're not in the middle of the room, but just getting comfortable with the idea of being upside down.
How long would you do that for?
I always start off my sessions with a little bit of conditioning as a warm up. So I usually do about like, if it's an hour-long session, we do about 15-20 minutes of conditioning in the apparatus. And then we spend some time working on new tricks, maybe stringing them together into a combo, adding in a little bit of spin, and then cooling down. So I always incorporate a little bit of conditioning into all of my training, but a little bit of like, there is an aspect of kind of like, you have to do it to be successful at it. So it's like if you're worried about starting pole or circus and you're not able to do a pull up and you're waiting until you're strong enough to do a pull up to go and start pole and circus will get you strong enough to do.
Okay, so you're saying train in the activity and you'll get strong as you go.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's great. So what kind of commitment do you think people should make and at what age groups too? Like, so you got, the under 40 and the over 40, what kind of commitment should they make?
I say usually if you're starting out 3 hours a week, and then as you start to ease your way in, up it 4 hours, something like that. It really depends on how serious you want to be, right? Like when I walked into my first class, the studio that I went to had an unlimited membership. So I would go 3 hours a day,
Well, also, Eman, you have different clients, right? Because I could imagine some are in there to be better at the craft, some are in there for body image, and some want to get strong and lower body fat percentage. Like, how do you address all those needs as far as like their approach?
Most of my students come to me because they want to do something new, stay fit, learn like a new craft, maybe be able to perform it, you know what I mean? So maybe be able to take that. I usually give students a little bit of a conditioning routine as well, things that they can do at home to see some improvements. But most people get to a point where they're like, I want to perform something. I want to perform for my friends and family, do like a party and do like a performance or something like that. I want to compete. So some of it turns into a competitive level, right? So
yeah.
So it depends on what your goals are, but for the most part, I think a lot of people just want to feel strong on the apparatus, be able to do the tricks and achieve like some of those skills, and then be able to do that with poise and presence,
Yeah. What areas of the body do you think people really have to focus on? Or tell me how it works with pole dancing and aerial hoop training as far as areas of their body that's going to get stronger and that they need to have at least somewhat strong going in.
It's gonna be everything. I actually, I don't know, like, you know, in circus, we hang off of anything that we can. So we hang off of our ankles, we hang off of our toes, we strengthen all those really tiny muscles, you know, you hang off your neck. But most, like, the biggest areas are gonna be like your shoulder, your lats, your upper back. Low core, we also strengthen the psoas, the hip flexors, the quads.
And that's because of all the hanging, right?
All of the knee hangings that we do. Yep.
What other things how do you get people adjusted to, you know, that constant endurance on their backs? What kind of other things do you do for the aerial hoop to build that endurance in their back? Or the pole, rather.
Some of it, there is going to be like an element where some things that we'll do will help with stamina. So I do recommend that people do a little bit of cardio so that they have the stamina to even do that 3-minute routine. Sometimes 3 minutes sounds like nothing, but
how many days a week, Eman? How many days a week, Eman, do you think they should commit, like, to really?
I would say 4. I would say 4 is a good number of days. 3 to 4. If you want to like really see some improvement a little bit like more quickly, I would say 3 to 4.
Yeah.
And I would say I also recommend that students spend some time doing some mobility training on their own. So when they're not in the studio working on their strength, they don't forget to open up their shoulders and their back and to stretch their splits and to stretch for those lines, because then you're going to limit all of the things that you can do. You're going to absolutely cap your progress if you don't also have the mobility. So it's a very like functional sport. You can't just be very strong, but then also be, you know, hunched and not be able to open up your chest, maybe grab your back foot in an open shoulder position, things like that, be able to split, be able to extend the backs of your knees if you're really tight. Sometimes people get really tight in the fascia behind the knees from all of the knee hooking, and then they can't extend the backs of their legs, so they end up with this permanent micro bend. So I always recommend that we do a lot of stretching when we're on our own, and I call it even lazy stretching. If you're at home watching TV, instead of sitting on the couch, get on the floor, do a little bit of hip.
Is there a lot of injuries or like soreness from your clients, like from like how long do they work out with you? How intense is it?
Yeah, most of my students do like an hour to 90 minutes, no more than that. I think any more than that in a class setting is a lot. And you'll even see professionals in circus schools, and when they're training, they take long breaks. We take long breaks. So you go up in the air, you think about something, you sit down, maybe sit down for like 5 minutes, you know what I mean? Well, so that's okay.
When I went on your Instagram and I went on a lot of your YouTube, I saw the shape that a lot of these dancers, they're in phenomenal shape.
Yeah.
Right. And I know we were speaking earlier about this training could actually be the sole training for you, like, you know, could meet all your needs, your endurance needs, strength needs. Can you talk more about like how you get your students to that point through the training, like as far as the different exercises that you do and through movement?
So a lot of the conditioning that I do is on the apparatus. We do things that are stamina based. We do a lot of like alternating, so pushing and pulling, especially when it comes to pull. Everything that keeps you up on a vertical bar that has no grip is actually your counter movement. So it's your push and your pull. So it's not just pulling into like an aerial hoop. Hoops, a lot of it is just pulling. So a lot of it is just shoulders back and down, opposite of handstands, pulling. But in pull, what's keeping you up in the air is your push and your pull. So we do train some pushing. I do recommend I make my students do specific push-ups that are very specific for the grips that we do, because there are specific grips. There are certain things that we do. And then I do some injury prevention stuff, because we do this very unnatural grip in circus and pole called a flag grip, where you twist and you would grab this way. So you would grab the pole this way, which is a little bit of a cheat because you need a little bit less strength to hold yourself up in this twisted grip. But it's very jamming on the shoulders. You would never naturally grab something like this, right?
This is probably perfect. This is probably a perfect time if you want to demonstrate how each muscle can be strengthened through the activities of pole dancing and aerial hoop training, because people out there need to see that this is an opportunity to, something that can substitute the gym and can actually, you can get strength and endurance.
Sure. Let me show you a little bit of this pushing and pulling action that I'm talking about. And you might actually recognize this shape maybe from calisthenics. So let's get my camera a little bit straighter. So here is a little shape you may recognize.
Right. Now, people don't start off doing all that, that's for sure, right?
Absolutely not. But here you can see that I'm pushing and pulling.
So just by hanging on, you're already using a lot of your back. The hooking on the hoop, you're definitely using your hamstrings.
Yeah.
And your back. I mean, how much does one hang on all the time? Because your back is like rock solid.
So one really big thing when we're trying to get upside down in that first straddle inversion. So if I'm trying to, this is a very basic entry, and this will take us inside of the hoop. This is our straddle. So if you'll notice, what I'm going to do is pull up, but then
that's like a pull-up.
Rock back, extend my arms and rock back. So then get my hips over my head to come into this inversion position. And this is your basic invert. So it's the first thing that you'll learn.
So that's a basic invert.
That is a basic invert, yes. So that is going to be the first thing that you'll learn to get inside of your hoop. And we have this in pole as well. So if you're doing it,
you can't have a bad back doing this then.
Ideally, no. Although, so it really depends on what your goals are, right? So if you're looking to just dance, and there are tons of people who just dance around their pole and they don't necessarily want to get up in the air or do those crazy tricks or whatever, and that'll be shoulder strength, being able to like pull up, create space to create that floatiness, you know what I mean?
Okay. For someone to look the way you look right now, what do they have to do? Because I know you're relying on the activities that you're doing here for fitness, right? So what do they have to do to look like you from a nutrition and the program you're doing right now?
Currently, what I do is I focus on training for to be a professional performer, right? So what I do is I train as often as I can to work on new skills. I'm rehearsing constantly. I'm training other people. I'm rehearsing new acts all the time. So
how many hours do you think are you actively, intensely working on?
I am training about 15 hours a week right now. So I train, and then that is between conditioning, sometimes a little bit of rehab, mobility and flexibility training, creative training. So I consider like rehearsals creative training, you know what I mean? Coming up
so like what, 3 hours a day?
3 hours a day. Usually I like to do about 3 hours. Sometimes I do 2 hours in the morning and then 2 hours at night if if it allows, you know what I mean? And that is because this is what I do for a living. If I were to go and walk into a show and exert all of my energy, and then I haven't been training all week, and my body is deconditioned, I would injure myself 100%. So I would injure myself and I would look terrible on stage.
So Eman, how do you take care of your muscles, right? How do you manage your muscles? And what do you do for your nutrition? What's your normal, what's a day in Eman's kitchen, in the life of Eman?
Nutrition I'm not super focused on. I try to eat as well as I can, as often as I can, but I'm pretty on the go. And I don't like to really restrict my diet. So I treat myself once a day. I ate a donut this morning. So
more or less you burn off your calories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I put sugar in my coffee. I eat whatever I want. I eat a ton of protein though. I used to be vegetarian, vegan, and I actually went back to eating meat specifically so that I could eat more protein and get it in a little bit more easily without having to meal prep so hard. I don't think it's possible to get the amount of protein that you need in a day with such a high level of activity as a vegetarian vegan, but I think it requires a lot of prepping, and I am just not, I don't have the lifestyle for it.
Are you vegan?
I was for a short period of time.
Yeah. How did that go?
It didn't go very well. I was not very, I was not organized enough with my meal planning. So,
So do you still have, you don't have any eating disorders right now, do you?
no, I eat pretty much whatever I want.
Yeah.
So.
How did you transition out of that? Just when you left home, like you were saying? And then
Yeah, I found something that really spoke to me. I was not so focused on my eating. I was not so focused on what my body looked like again. And like I was more focused on what my body could do. And I realized that I really needed the energy, you know, and I was not living at home. I wasn't getting a drive everywhere, or I wasn't like driving everywhere. I was cycling everywhere. So I was moving constantly, and I was hungry all the time. And I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. And then on top of it, I used to do things like take ephedrine, which dehydrates the hell out of you. And I used to injure myself constantly, and I couldn't figure out why. I was like, I'm not at, like, I would be trying to stretch for my splits and trying to achieve splits and mobility and stuff, but I was so dehydrated from taking this ephedrine,
right.
drinking so much caffeine, that I would injure myself all the time. And I really hurt my knee at one point, that it was like shifting and popping constantly from overstretching and from taking these pills. So I really had to kind of just like let that go.
Well, you're done with that. That's great. Now, as far as how did you get started in the shows? Walk us through that.
When I started, there were not as many people or as many places to perform in Toronto, especially when it came to pole outside of like strip club environments. So when I started, Rebel had just opened. I started performing. I did a show at the Darling Mansion on New Year's Eve through a friend of mine. I did aerial hoop for that. And then I did another show with a friend. It was a Women's Day event. It was a beautiful event. Actually, it was choreographed, I think, by one of the dancers from the Canadian National Ballet and stuff. And so it was a great networking opportunity. I got some beautiful photos, and I applied to work at Rebel. This was probably like 5 months into my training. I could barely go upside down. I was
How long are you, like, walk us through this, this night? You got it, a Saturday night, you're at Rebel.
Yeah.
Right? And, everything's going crazy. Like, how long are you on the pole, and how long do you hold yourself up there? And
we used to do 3 20-minute sets. And I mean, I say used to, it's been quite a while since I've worked there, obviously, because of the pandemic and stuff. But yeah, we used to do 3 20-minute sets. And the whole point of the show, actually, if you see those 2 poles, if you've ever been to Rebel, there are 2 very high poles that are up at the front beside the main stage. And if you look at them from the top balcony, it just looks, you're kind of just in the background of like one big show, right? So it's not really that you're like doing anything crazy choreographed, but like the point is that you're up in the air, and you're up in the air with the other person. And when you're looking at it as a whole, as like an audience member, it looks amazing. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
So it's not, yeah. And with pole, like, even when you're sitting, you're working. You're like, it's not like the hoop. It's not like you can sit inside of something, you know what I mean? So you're working constantly. And I got a lot of stage time. I worked every weekend, every chance I could. I was super keen. This was what I really wanted to do. And I would like bike to my job at Rebel, and then I would work at Cabana the next day. So I would work till like 3 in the morning. I would bike home, and then I would bike back and go to Cabana, and then I would work again at Rebel. And I was just like so excited to be doing what I was doing. And so I worked as much as I could, and I got a lot of stage time. And I think like that really helped me get strong, and it gave me something to work towards, you know?
What was the best event you went to?
The best event that I've worked at, or
worked at.
I would have to say, I think Snoop Dogg was probably like my peak experience. So
how did you get that? How did that start?
I actually, I had the residency at Lavelle for all of 2019, and I had like someone that I knew in our circle from Windsor, who I think is an incredible performer. Her name is Alex. Or Alexia is her stage name. And I had never met her, but I sent her a message, and I was like, can you please work for me? Like one of the days that I'm not available or something, will you sub for me because I think you'd be amazing here.
Yeah.
And we had never met. She came all the way from Windsor to Toronto and I gave her my apartment at the time. I was like, you can just stay here. Here's my key. And so she wanted to get me back. And so she connected me with a stripper that she used to work with out in Winnipeg, I believe. Her name is Onyx. And she's hiring all of the dancers for Snoop Dogg across Ontario because what they do is they hire local dancers for pole, and then they have some dancers that tour with them, the choreographed dancers. So she kind of connected me with them. They booked me for 3 or 4 shows, I think, in Ontario, and that was a super cool experience. So I got to travel a bit. Yeah.
When you get popular like how you are right now, is there any like leagues or competitions that lead up to something like in bodybuilding and things like that for pole dancing and aerial hoop training?
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, when it comes to pole dancing in particular, the peak experience is not necessarily like working in a club. Not everyone wants to work in a club, but it is doing competitions and competing. So there is something called the Canadian Pole Fitness Association, which is run by someone from Toronto who used to be one of my coaches. Her name is Elizabeth Nagelhays. I don't want to like butcher her last name, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But she runs the Canadian Pole Fitness Association. She runs a competition that is in the Toronto Pro Show. And so she runs that competition. There's also stuff.
What are those competitions like, Eman?
They're amazing. They're incredible. They do things.
Walk me through a competition. How does that work?
Different levels, different categories, super stressful. The last one that I did, I cried a lot.
So everybody gets on the pole, obviously.
Yeah, so everyone actually gets 2 poles. So when you're competing, you usually get 1 pole that is locked on static and 1 pole that is on spin. They will tell you the exact distance between your 2 poles, and they will be adjacent side by side, and you can start wherever on stage. They'll map out the stage for you. They will also give you a time slot before the competition where you can test out the stage and ensure that your choreography, like, so say you have some floor choreography that takes you from one pole to the other, make sure that you know the distance exactly, because maybe you've been practicing it without the exact distance. So just so you know what I mean? So they will give you the opportunity to do that. They're super supportive communities. They're really awesome.
What are they focusing on?
Well,
you get on the pole now.
It depends.
What are they focusing on?
Yeah, it really depends on the level, like the level that you're in and the category. So there are tons of categories, say like floor choreography. So there are some categories that are strictly just floor dancing, or strictly just exotic, so more focused on choreography, or strictly strictly based on the tricks and your lines and whatever, and more on like the sport side of things. And then there are some that are a little bit more focused on dance. Every competition names their categories a little bit differently. So
you have to like hold any positions where you have to show off your athleticism as far as strength
and so it really depends on what level and what category you're in. And so if you're in a category that is focused primarily on your tricks and your transitions and your strength and your mobility and whatever, so that is like what you would want, like a very athletic routine. If you are in a category that is strictly exotic dance or whatever, you would want to do something in heels and focus on the dance portion of and the flow of your choreography. So so it really
like an artistic side to it too, like
absolutely. And there's like artistic where you can a lot of people will do like sort of a tell a story, do some kind of like storytelling, or and build like a whole show, or like sometimes like people will make it balletic or contemporary, and really it's just kind of a means to an end, you know what I mean? Like I know that whole sorry,
how'd you get started?
How did I get started in
the competition, and then how did it go?
I've only really competed like once. So it was a really stressful experience for me. I actually had someone in the studio that I was at. She was like, you should do this competition. She wanted everyone in the studio to do the competition. So I decided to do it. I had a buddy that I trained with, and I had someone help me with my choreography. I had a coach help me with my choreography. I placed. It was awesome.
What division were you in?
I was in level 3, and it was a more sport-based category. I actually can't remember the name of the division itself, but this was in 2018. So
Was it focusing on more on your artist side or more the athletic side?
more the athletic side.
The
Yeah.
athletic?
Yeah.
That's good. And was there anything that you had to focus on leading up to it, or as far as your training?
Not even just like necessarily the tricks and the transition and having the stamina to like go through the entire routine, coming up with a costume, but also profiling, like making sure that you are facing the correct way and that the judges see your trick from the right angle. That's super important. It's not just doing the trick and then facing whatever way you end up. You know
So
what I
angles,
mean?
angles come into play.
Angles are important too. You can't forget about them. So
And
so
the look, does like your costume and whatever you're wearing, does that everything plays into it?
Well, why not? You're performing, putting on a show, right? You don't want to show up, and if you're telling a story, you know what I mean, and you want to tell some kind of story. You don't want to just go up there and do a bunch of tricks, So you got to think about your costume, your song. Like maybe your costume has to match your song. You know what I mean?
So you went on stage and you did your thing, and what happened after that?
So the first time I ever competed, actually, I was working an office job, and it was just before my birthday, a week before this competition, like a week before my birthday as well. And I got laid off, and it was the last desk job that I ever had. And I almost dropped out of this competition. I was this close. And I went and I did it anyway, and I placed. I was super happy. They called me up on stage. I got a little medal and stuff. So and then I never looked back. I never went back and took another job. I just decided to pursue this full time, and I felt like it was a sign or a calling almost,
You manifested it. That's great. What was your preparation coming into the competition, even though you're going through all that?
Tons of choreography. I worked with multiple coaches, and I worked with multiple people to help me get the floor stuff down, the tricks, decide on the tricks. There were also some things with the level that I was at that required, so there were move caps. So I had to have 3 points of contact on the pole at all times, even when I was transitioning between tricks. So
what do you mean by that? I'm a newbie here.
So I can't just like what I just did on the hoop, where my hands were just on and my legs were off of the hoop and off of the apparatus. That would be a trick that, for example, is like not allowed. So
that's not allowed.
Not allowed, no, because that's only 2 points of contact. So I've only got my 2 hands on the pole, and that's it, right? So you have to have 3 points of contact on the pole at all times, and that means that
1 foot.
1 foot or your thigh, or so if I'm inverting on the pole, I would wrap my arm around. So my armpit would be a point of contact, my hand would be a point of contact, my other hand would be a point of contact. So that would be 3 points of contact, but also it's like touching my waist. So the waist even counts as a point of contact. So as long as the pole is like holding onto your waist or something like that. And that's just a matter of like keeping things fair,
If someone wanted to get started with, with pole dancing, what would you recommend for them where would they get equipment? What would you recommend?
I always recommend X-Pole or Loop It poles. X-Pole has a factory in Mississauga, I believe. So they have a warehouse in Mississauga, and you can get them out of the United States, but Loop It is based in the UK. Their poles are gorgeous. Really worthwhile to get, but it's a little bit more expensive, obviously, with shipping and stuff like that and the conversions. So X-Pole, I think, is the most accessible and the best. Don't go buy a pole from Amazon, please.
And tell me about the lollipop behind you.
The lollipop. So the stage, the base part of that lollipop, so the base up to the pole is by X-Pole, and the top piece that I've got there was custom welded by a welder in South Carolina. His name is Duke Jenner, and his company is called Circ.Life. And I love this one.
So it's bolted, just describe it, because some people are listening on radio. Is it bolted into the ground? in a
It's
circle?
not, no. So it's a freestanding apparatus. The stage, so it actually, the stage breaks down into several pieces. So there's a base that fans out, and you've got some pie plates that are shaped like a pizza slices, and you would stick them in, and that adds like, I think each set of pie plates is about like 50 pounds. So the whole base itself is maybe, over 100 pounds. And that's just what's keeping you down. There are also some legs that you can pull out and stabilize. They've got some little screws that you can level out if your ground is a little bit uneven. And then the pole just goes right through the center. It's got a bearing unit in there, and that's where it spins from. So it spins from that bearing unit, and then the hoop on top is obviously freestanding. It's not stuck to anything. It's not attached to anything. The base is not attached to anything either. It's just the weight that keeps you up. So.
All right. Now, as far as popularity amongst men, is that a thing, or like, is that, well, tell me more about that.
I think so there are definitely some apparatuses that men are more drawn towards. I see a lot more men doing rope, aerial rope, or aerial straps, or so some of those apparatuses. I do see a lot of men doing pole, actually. I do see that becoming a little bit more of a thing and becoming more acceptable. And in Montreal, you will see Chinese pole, which is similar to what we've got back here, but it's a rubber wrapped pole. It's much thicker than your traditional dance pole.
Is that more difficult?
Yes, it's much more difficult, especially on the hands. You've got to wear clothes with that one because the rubber keeps you up in the air. And it really, like, it's very grippy. I actually tried it once. I did a little drop on it, and I like completely wrecked my elbow. And the bruise was there for like 2 months after. It just like didn't go away. It was a huge scab. So it's very grippy. It's much harder on the hands, and that is a pretty male dominated sport as well. Trapeze and dance trapeze, you'll see a lot of men on. I think hoop and pole studios kind of cater a little bit more to women, but you'll see a good mix in circus spaces. So
now with you, I know you have a lot of dancers as your clients and stuff. What do you focus on with them? What do you focus on when you're helping you know, strippers, dancers, as far as their strength conditioning and endurance? And
personally, I am more of a trickster, and I like the dynamic stuff, and I like the really showy tricks. So I don't really like, not I don't consider myself a dancer, but I really like those flashy tricks, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I like to focus on conditioning, strength, getting used to the apparatus. So especially when it comes to pole and stuff like that, a lot of people, you know, we're not used to smacking ourselves into a metal bar. That's not a natural thing. Right. And it can be very hard on the hands. I don't know if you can see like all my calluses.
You got calluses, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's super hard on the hands. It's super hard, and like especially with pole, you need your skin to stay up in the air, right? So you're gripping with your skin. So you know, getting your nerves used to gripping onto a metal pole, and hitting yourself in the shin and in the forearm and stuff.
How do you deal with all that when it happens?
Yeah, well, I think most people are determined to get into the trick and to achieve it. And so even when it's a little bit painful, they push past it. And eventually, like with anything, your body will become accustomed to it. You're not going to kill the nerves. Sometimes that's a little joke. Like we'll say, they'll go, you just got to kill the nerves. You just got to kill the nerves. You're not going to kill them, but you'll reroute them a little bit.
How do you guys deal with injuries? Do you get injured a lot like that? Like what do you do for injuries?
You get bruises. Yeah, we bruise all the time, and I call those pole kisses or hoop kisses. Something to be proud of. You work really hard for it. You get scabs. I used to bleed at shows all the time. So I have a little laser. I have a green light laser that I use for small injuries. I even I don't know if you can see it. My finger's a little fat right in the joint there.
Right.
Capsule injury here. So I use my laser for that. I use a little bit of red light therapy. My partner has like a big red light that I sit under for about 20 minutes at a time. And that's great. It's great for your skin, and it's also great for recovery. I take Epsom salt baths, and I add some grated ginger. That's a thing that I like to do.
Epsom salt bath is really good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the stretching is a part of your recovery, you know what I mean? So working on maybe not necessarily like pushing past like really heavy like mobility training and like trying to get to a really like past your threshold, but like,
Mhm.
you know, stretching at the end of your session, or, you know, when you go home afterwards and cooling down,
Mm.
it is a huge help for the muscles.
Yeah.
Arnica gel, is another nice one, but you know, like kind of just a part of the sport. You're gonna end up with calluses on your hand. You're gonna end up with
Yeah.
bruises. You're gonna end up with scabs and stuff like that. And it's kind of just like a part of it, and you grow to love it. So
But do you have any like joint injuries, knees or shoulders or anything like that?
I have a knee injury. I have torn my meniscus. I also tore my hamstring right underneath the glute, about that much.
How
Many
did you
years
do that?
ago. I had a coach sit on me in a split, and I'm a little bit older, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not really and that's very like a very old school method.
So
And
he sat on your shoulders so you like to get into the splits?
sat on my back leg to push me a little bit lower into my split to flatten out my split. And you know what? It wasn't 100% his fault. I did feel a little bit of a tinge, and then I went and I did a show in Ottawa, and I had a couple of splits in that routine. I was a little bit cold. I already knew I was kind of like on the threshold of injuring myself even
Yeah.
further. I pushed myself a little bit harder than I should have while I was cold, just to get through that routine and, you know, be able to do those splits in that show. And I came home and I couldn't walk, and it was terrible.
And your meniscus, did
I
you get
think
that healed up?
it did. It did. Yeah. I used the light therapy quite a lot. And I had to take a break from splits training for quite a while. I had to strengthen around the area a lot too. So I do a little bit of like micro bend conditioning. So I'll take a band, like a heavy weighted band. I'll tie it to a fixed point, usually my pole. I'll put my leg in it, and I'll do some heel, like pushing the heel down and squeezing around the knee to strengthen that area. And I think that might have been something that creeped down from my hamstring injury. So hamstring got injured, and then it kind of creeps down to the same knee.
Now, when you get injured like that, I'm
Mhm.
thinking you still can do some activities on the bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I was still performing. I was still working. Maybe not necessarily splitting as often or anything like that, but I was still working. So, but I mean, there are injuries that will like knock you out and that will take you out. I've given myself a concussion before, and
Oh, how'd that happen?
uh, it was my birthday, and my partner came underneath me on the pole, and I slid, but because he was underneath me, it was kind of loud. I couldn't rehook, so I went straight down, hit myself right above the eye. And
Jeez.
I gave myself a little bit of a concussion. I had vertigo for several months, so I had to take some time off of work. That
Yeah,
was
because
so.
you couldn't train with vertigo right now, right?
I don't actually experience much vertigo anymore.
Mhm.
I used the Epley maneuver. So I don't know if you've ever heard of it. You like
No,
hang your
what is that?
you it's just a little maneuver that moves the crystals inside of your inner ear. So you would hang your head off the edge of like a bed or a table, and
Mhm.
you would turn in one direction really quickly, then turn again in like another direction really quickly, and then sit up really quickly, and it shifts the crystals in your ear. And it's kind of like a fast fix if you have like minor vertigo symptoms.
Yeah.
And sometimes it fixes the problem. I know typically like they say vertigo can come back, and it usually does, but usually the maneuver helps me right away. I haven't experienced vertigo in over a year, so.
Now, as far as a career in
Mhm.
pole dancing or aerial hoop training,
Yep.
outside of say stripping, can you make money and
Yeah, why not?
yeah. Like,
You can do
yeah,
whatever
so
you want.
talk about that because there's so many, there might be people who are listening and they're wondering, man, maybe I can do this, so
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I personally, I've never like I've worked in strip clubs where I've done like stage shows for special events or something
mm,
like that. But I've never actually worked as a stripper. I've never like worked in a strip club. And I know like I kudos to all of those women who do that. But it's a lot more work, and it's a lot more than just pole dancing or your stage shows. That's actually not what like stripping really is. You know what I mean?
right, right, right.
So I know that there's like that the stigma around it, and stigma around pole dancing because you need skin to grip onto the pole. But you like use that stigma to your advantage. All of those clubs now, like Rebel, Lavelle, Goldie, all of the clubs that I've ever worked at have all thrown a pole in there just to like make things more interesting and make things cooler. And they
Mhm.
hired us to like come do tricks. You know what I mean? I've done work for film and television. I was actually on Jupiter's Legacy doing pole because I could go upside down on a pole. You know what I mean?
Oh,
In a club scene. So.
what do you think the future of pole dancing from a recreational standpoint is looking like?
Well, I mean, we saw J-Lo do pole at the Super Bowl, and and it's becoming. There was that Netflix documentary, which I actually didn't see. I didn't hear very good things about, but I think pole is becoming a lot more accepted as a thing that you can do recreationally to feel good about yourself as a sport in fitness. I think we talked about this earlier, but one of my old coaches who kind of was in the pole scene when it like and kind of pioneered, I guess, like pole at the very beginning, because you can kind of take it back to about 10 years when pole became a sport. She did a fitness competition at the time. She decided to only do pole to prove that pole was a real sport that could get you fit, and she actually won that competition. She has some photos and they're all and
So
she's
how'd she do that? How'd she prove that, this can make you fit? Like, what did she do?
well, instead of doing the traditional weight training and whatever, she actually only trained pole. So she only conditioned pole. She only did pole tricks, whatever, and that was her primary way of training to get her body in shape for this fitness competition and to
Right.
this place. So.
Now, do you see a lot of interest from people like?
Yeah, I do. I see a lot more interest, and I think even when I perform pole out in like events and in clubs, I think that there's a lot more respect for pole dancing because most people have taken a pole dance class before. It's like, I mean, the whole point is to make it look easy and flowy and beautiful. And so sometimes when people look at you in a hoop, they don't really necessarily think that you're doing anything and they don't really understand, but everyone has taken a pole class. Like everyone has tried pole once. So they will all come and they'll be like, wow, I know that's really hard. I tried pole one time. It's hard. Yeah,
So
yeah.
what plans do you have for yourself in the pole dancing industry? What's your dream? What's your goals?
Well, I think I was kind of thinking about it recently, and especially with everything going on with COVID, 2019 was really like the first year that I left working an office job and I decided to pursue pole and circus full time. So that was the first year that I only did pole and circus. I was only doing gigs. I was teaching a little bit. I was actually mostly only performing. I really kind of started my coaching career in the midst of COVID.
Now,
So
what's harder, performing at, say, Rebel or going in the circus?
they're all hard. Everything has like something that's difficult about it. I think I like to do the clubs because even though the sets are longer, I think it keeps me fit and the standard isn't really the same. I'm not as concerned about if I'm wearing shoes. I'm not like so worried about my toes. I'm not like so worried about my lines. I'm not so worried about like everything being completely perfect. It's not a routine. I'm just kind of doing some of my favorite tricks and stuff and hanging out, and you can be interactive with the crowd while you're up there and talk to people, and you know what I mean?
Mm.
Whereas when you're doing a bigger show or like a wedding or a corporate event, there's a little bit more pressure. I think there's a little bit more pressure. I hate doing solos. Like I love them. Sometimes I hate them. I still get nervous. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So just in the same way as like, you're in school and you have to go and do a presentation and it's just you up there, you know what I mean? And it's a little bit more serious and a little bit more pressure and everyone is a little not drunk enough, maybe a little bit more serious, you know what I mean? But I mean, that's what I aspire towards. Like for sure, I would love to tour the show and travel and do circus and really have like that peak career moment. I feel like I haven't had that yet, so I'm not ready. Every time I go and I apply for my CRB or whatever and it says plan out your career, I'm like, I'm not ready to leave this career yet. I'm not ready to leave my dream yet. So
How is it working with Snoop Dogg?
It was super fun. It was super fun. They order you food, they bring you drinks, you know, you get to see Snoop and like I always say, it's like, you know, when you see someone that's so famous and you've like seen their image your entire life that when you meet them in person, you're like, are you a wax figure? Like, are you a person? It just didn't feel real every single time I got a photo with him and stuff, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
every time you meet him, it doesn't really necessarily feel real. And it's
Was he just at your event, or you were working for him?
so we were on stage with him. The last show that I did was in
What
London, Ontario, and Genuine was there, and it was like this huge event, huge event.
were you in the
It was like
circle? Were you in the hoop, or were you doing the
no,
pole?
I was doing pole. I was doing pole. He had 4 pole dancers. They travel with some stage poles, so just like these, but
Yeah.
with a pole on top. And they just travel with them, and then they hire dancers in that area to perform.
Mhm.
So I got to do a couple of shows around Ontario and stuff, and that was super fun. It was really cool. We got to do pole. Everyone was really sweet. Everyone that we worked with was like incredibly sweet. It wasn't super high pressure or anything like that. But
Well, I'm
a lot
telling
of
you, this is fabulous, Iman. I want to, before we go, I want you to let the people know why pole dancing is just a fabulous way to strengthen their whole body. I mean, through the use of calisthenics, you know, body weight, because
yeah.
it's a great opportunity for people to get started with a new activity from a recreational level. And obviously the popularity is growing and everything.
You know, I always think of it as a workout in disguise. Every single time I would walk into a class, I wasn't focused on like the workout or sweating or anything except for getting the movements down and feeling flowy and like feeling free. And when you're up in the air, you feel so free. It's so worth it to try at least once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it strengthens, really, it is whatever you want it to be, which is, I think, the most beautiful thing about pole is, you know, you want to dance around it, you want to dance on the floor, you just want to feel sexy, you want to go up in the air, you want to turn into a sport, you want to do crazy flips like those Russian gymnasts, you can do that too. It's like, it's really whatever you want it to be. And that's like and I don't think that there's anything better than flying in the air, so
Yeah. Oh man. Well, Iman, really, I appreciate from the bottom of my heart for coming on the show. DANCINGINCIRCLES.CA, folks. That's the site you need to visit. You need to see her in action. And I guess they could reach out to you for any support that they would need, right? So, all right. Thank you so much, Iman.
Thank you
And
for
everyone
having
from iLive,
me.
you had a great show. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.